been busy. We went through, got all the switches and everything cleaned up. And I even went through and got the new leads on the switches, finally. And tested them. I ended up with 20 of them that were bad. There was a couple on the old boxes, on the old box that was already bad, and some of them took damage getting them out. They were in there pretty good. I've also gone through the new fans and put on pigtails so I can get them hooked up to power. And I just brought the carcass in, the new carcass, which is right there. And I thought I would give you a comparison. There's the old one. So everything is a lot different. That one's got a lot more room in there, and I wanted the extra room in there because of the AC unit, the household current I'm adding to it. This box here just didn't have the room for it, so I wanted it in here. But now I've got this in here. I've still got to go through, let's see over here, all my connectors and get their leads and stuff on there, and I can get the fans installed now too if I wanted to. In fact, I might get the fans in. We've got the lid installed. I used a piano hinge on the back and open it up. I also put 2 chains on it to keep it from flopping all the way back. We also got in here, and I got netting over where the fans and the air inlets go. We also got the box put in, and I just finished with the handles. There's one here and one down the other side, and I went through and had to cut the screws off on it and give you a better look. There's the outlet box there. Now, next step, wiring this thing is going to be the last step I do basically on here, the last major step. Right now, my next chore is I've got several power supplies and the power bar. Basically that power supply, these power supplies, that power strip, and the fans I need to get installed. And I've got to figure out how I want to lay them out in here and what have you. I know the power strip's going in over here at some point. That's our next step, is just basically to get the power to work. Continues. You notice, I think, I showed you this stuff, the top and the box and stuff last clip. Sorry, I'm trying to get my mind going. We've got a winter storm advisory going, and it is snowing like crazy outside. But I've been doing some work. I got the guts in, or the power part of it. We've got one switch. This is our master power switch. If I turn that on like that, I've got one on each side, so it's blowing air. Like this one here is blowing air that way, and that one's blowing air that way. I hope get some air movement in here. The power supplies right now, I've only got that one there hooked up. That's what's powering the fans. Is the only one plugged in, but each one of those power supplies also have a fan. So between those power supplies and those there, we should have proper air movement. Now as to my switch there, what I did is I tapped on, soldered on some wire, and it actually goes down to the power cord. Get things unplugged. But it goes into the power cord, which goes out the hole and over to the outlet. And what I did is I took the housing off, and there was a white and a green and a black wire inside. The green wire is ground, black wire is power, the white wire is your neutral. And what I did is I snipped the black wire and simply soldered on 2 wires to run up to go to the switch. So when I turn on the switch, it's actually energizing the power line going into here. And I should have used 2 black wires. I chose to use a black and a green. That way I could tell them apart when I was hooking them up. Doesn't make any bit of difference. I'm the only one who will be working on this anyway. So, but we've got this stage done. Now I've got both the fans in, all the power stations are in. I can start putting things in. I think what I'm going to do is, before I start the wiring mess, that is the low voltage between the switches up there, the connectors there, and running them to power, which is a nightmare of a mess, I'm going to work right here in this area. This is where all my household current comes in. I have a switch for each outlet. I've got a box that holds all 4 outlets, and I've got another 4 holes down there to where all the extension cords plug in. I've got to get in, get wired up. So we're going to work on that end of the project now and try to get that done and buttoned up before I turn my attention to working on the switches and the connectors and power supplies. And okay, another little segment for you. Showed you this, I believe, last segment. This is for the household current. It is totally done except for the cover. And I ended up having to special order a cover that'll fit these outlets, and it's supposed to be in about 2 weeks. No big rush on that. We've got the 4 switches in for the controls, each of the outlets. Haven't tested it yet. That'll be the last thing I do once everything is done. And then we got our master power switch. And when I throw that, you look down here, and the fan lights up. That means the fan's got power. Get the cover opened up. You can see the back of the switches. And the tape is not sticking. I'll have to fuck with that eventually. But we've got all the guts in. All 4 power supplies, both the 2 computer power supplies and the server power supplies, are all tied in and working to the power bar, which this switch here controls. And if you look down here, you can tell, turn it off, and everything winds down. Throw it the other way, everything turns back on. So this is all working to hook up both the switches and my connectors on the back. To power, each power supply has its own set of bus bars. You know, this power supply controls this set, this one does this one, this power supply does this one, and that's all 12 volt. And then this one here is my 5 volt, goes to here, right where my 5 volt connections are, and I got 12 volt down there. My next chore is over here with these. All my switches and my connectors that go on the back. I gotta start getting those mounted and wired. Grounds go to one and positive, or the hot ones go to the other. I've got to start getting them in and start wiring them. And that is the biggest mess out of the lot. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with the ones in the back and get all their grounds hooked up and where they need to go. The positive leads off of those will run up to the switches, and the switches down to the power thing. And it's not that hard. It's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. It's just a wiring nightmare due to the fact of all the wires, and it'll take a while. Well, some headway's been made. We've made it in, and I've got all my connections in the back. This is where all the lights, the motors, and everything plug in. And we've done the stereo jacks. I've got a bank of 12 volt there, another bank there, and my backup emergency 12 volt in case I need it here. And then those are 5 volt. Putting those on was easy. The fun part is in here. And as you can see, I still got some red wires hanging out. That's my positive leads. But I went through all the black wires and got them ran over to their bus bars and plugged in. So that part of the wiring is done. Now these red wires go up to the switches to get tied in. And as you can tell, I haven't got the switches or the little LEDs in yet. And that's my next part of the project. I've got to start wiring up LEDs to put in each one of these holes, and each LED will be tied into a switch. Once I get the lights and the switches in, I can start making connections to the switches with here, and then I've got another power line that runs down to the power buses. And I got one there, one there, one there, and one there. I know, a weird angle, and that's because I got the top raised up. But we got all the switches and the LED bulbs in for the 12 volt side. I'm currently working on this mess, which was worse than that mess. I've gotten 3 switches done, or started. I've got this switch, and this switch. I got one hot wire, and the hot wire from the LED running down to its mate down here. So I've got this one, and this one done. And I'm going to go through and get all of these connected up. They're wires from here down to here. And then we'll move on to the next step. I'll clean up the board a little bit, get rid of a few of the wires sticking out. A little bit of progress. I got the first circuit here, which is running off of this power supply, done. I've still got to do those yet. But it's a lot of weaving, both up here and down below. And it works. That's the nice thing about it. I've gone through, hold on here, get seated, and I've done my testing. Now I've got 18 switches and 18 different connections down here. I've gone through and tested them all with an LED. And to test them, it's just a matter of flicking the switch. LED comes on here, which means the switch is on. And this LED here is on. It is controlled by that switch. On, off, on, off. On, off, on. So anyway, I've gone through and I've checked both rows of switches and all the connections. Everything is wired correctly and works there. Our next task is going to be getting the rest of this done. I'm going to start on this one here, which connects to these here. And all the positive and negative leads go into these bars. I'm going to start getting that wired next. It's been about a week, roughly, since I shot the last segment. I have been busy. We left you with this and this done. Since then, I've gotten that done. This run here is for my backup 12 volt, which I have 7 connections, or 7 switches with 7 connections down on. Put that in basically as a backup in case something happened and I needed more 12 volt than I needed. I just got done doing these here. These are the 5 volt. And with that, all the wiring is done for the low voltage. Now, a little bit of a difference on here on this one versus the old one, the old power station. On the old power station, when I made all my connections, I made sure all the wiring was flush to the board here on the top and down here. And if you notice on these, I've got them standing out a little bit further. And I've got, more slop down here. I did that intentionally. Reason being is on the old one I had quite a few switches fail on me or a connection break down here, and I didn't have any slack in the wiring to do replacements. So this time around I left some slack. Like if this switch here bums or breaks out, I've got enough wire there where I could splice in another one and repair the switch if the switch goes bad. It's like that with both the switches and the LED lights going across and what have you. So with this, technically right now I can shut the lid and be done and call the project done. But I'm not done. I got a couple more things I need to do. When I installed the switches this time, I went and used hot glue to ring around them to hold them in, because I did the holes on the board a little bit bigger than what the switch needed. So I've got, like here, hot glue and stuff sticking out. I need to go through, get that cleaned off. I've also got some spots here along the edge like that there where the paint's chipped off, or over here where a screw stuck out and I had to grind it off and nicked up the paint. I need to go through and give this a touch up. And I got some black paint in. Once that's done, I've got to go through and label each of the switches along with the corresponding connections back here. So like this one here on, this is the 5 volt, is, in fact, turn that on. There, you can see it flashing off and on. Is a number 1 switch for the number 1 connection. So I need to label it. I need to put a 1 here by this switch, and I need to put a 1 here to label that. That way I know which switch is going where and what have you. For me it's no problem, but there's been times when I've had Swan help me test, and I've had her running the power board, and I'll tell her, you know, turn on number 1 or number 2, or disconnect number 1 or disconnect number 2. Looking at the way it is now, she's not gonna know which is number 1, which is number 2, and so on. You know, and also when I'm making connections on the back and what have you, I can kind of keep it corresponding. Oh, this one here is going to the cauldron in the witch's display, while this one down here is going over to the gypsy display or whatever. And you know, I can kind of keep track of which circuits are going where by what number they're plugged in on. So I've got to get things labeled. Which I haven't done yet. That's my next step. I got to clean up and label, and you'll get another look at it when she's all labeled. Now I'm going to turn my attention down here, and I'm turning that switch off. That kills the fan, which means all the low voltage is turned off. The AC, well, this was the first thing I had done. I have not finished it. The one thing I haven't done, there are 2 things I haven't done to it. The obvious one is I haven't gotten the outlet cover yet. I've got one on order, should be in the next couple of days. So we got that. But the other thing I haven't done is I have not tested it yet. So I don't know if we're going to get sparks and hisses out of this or what. So what I have done is I've got an extension cord out on the table there. I've got it ran over to the outlet. The outlet is simulating my power pole, which goes out behind the Hahn. And I normally run an extension cord from it, you know, out to the Hahn for the different trunk lines. Well, the trunk lines now, as I explained earlier in the vlog, will be plugged into this. I've got one for the blow up and then one each for trunk lines 1, 2, and 3. To get these things, to see if this thing's working, I got an extension cord like I just said plugged in. This one's going to be for the blow up circuit. Plug it in there. So now I should have power from the outlet over there, which is simulating the power pole, to this. And then this is going to be our electrical device. If I have this wired right, this light and this light should come on and that light should stay off. So we're going to plug it in like that and hit the switch. Okay, so I've got 2 green lights. That means that one circuit works. And that's right there. Throwing that switch makes it go on and off. Okay, so I know my AC is working on that outlet. Now I got to do the same thing for the other 3 outlets. And then I've also got to label these so I know which is which, and label these, label the switches. That's all the next step. And then once all that's done and I can get the outlet cover on, the project will be done. Well, we're at the end of it. And we've got Kaylee down here wanting to go for a walk. She's timed it just right. I'm about an hour late. We've got everything cleaned up. Everything is finished on the front. I've got all my marks up there. 12 volt, 12 volt, 12 volt. I did 5 volt over here. That way, when the wife's clicking buttons, she knows which set to go to. My main power switch is here. Flick that on. You know, and then I can throw other switches and you know, those will all work. Turn that off, we don't need it on right now. Up here on these 4 switches, I got blow, T1, T2, and T3. Blow is my circuit for the blow-ups that we use in our haunt out front in the photo op. Every day when we open up, I can come out here, throw that switch, and the blow-ups will go on, and then pull it back down, and they'll go off at night. T1, T2, and T3 stands for trunk line 1, trunk line 2, trunk line 3. Those are my main power feeds in the haunt. I have 3 of them that run out. Each one has its own circuit, you know, a 15 to a 30 amp circuit depending on what it's running. The blow up switch and the trunk line switches all correspond down here, and as you can see, I've got them all labeled. In fact, I've got all the switches labeled. Number 1 here corresponds with the number 1 switch up here, number 2 to the number 2, and so on. That way I can control things, either like full sets or individual items in the sets, what have you. And as I explained before on this power box, this bank here is going to be for all the LED lighting and all the displays. So if I wanted to kill the lights in one display, I can just throw the switch and kill it, but leave everything else on. This bank over here will run power for all my 12-volt motors, windshield wiper motors, and what have you. Okay, so I can control all the motorized props in the whole haunt here. And then this one here will probably very rarely ever get used. It's a 12-volt line. I'm using it as backup in case, for some reason, due to amperage and everything, I get these loaded up, you know, to where I can't put any more on without blowing circuit breakers. You know, I have a backup. You know, I've got, you know, 25 amps worth here. And then over here is a 5-volt. All the numbers on all the switches correspond to the jacks in the back here. Okay, now the only thing I have left to do is the outlet cover here, to go over that. And I'm still waiting for that part to come in. It hasn't come in yet. It'll probably be about another week. But I am not going to hold up the vlog for that. I doubt you guys are really interested in seeing that, really. You know, hey, got the outlet cover, that's what it looks like. Yeah. So with that, I'm calling this project done. This is the second project for the 2020 season. It is January 3rd, so we are actually in 2020. Stay spooky, stay toxic.